Jada Pinkett Smith is a vulnerable narcissistic. Yeah, we all knew that she's a narcissistic, so what? No, I'm not talking about narcissism, I'm talking about vulnerable narcissism. So, let me explain this. We all know what narcissism is. I mean, most people do. We just throw it around like an insult. You're a narcissistic. No, you're a narcissistic. Basically, the idea of narcissism that people have relates to the one-factor model of narcissism. But as time progressed, the hierarchical structure of narcissism progressed as well. Nowadays, we have a more definitive way of describing what narcissism is. Let me show you the narcissism pyramid. Like you guys see here, back in the days, it was one-factor model. Someone was a narcissistic and that was it. But now we have the two-factor model and later on three-factor models. And then we found the foundational traits of these factors. What I'm talking about is that narcissistic people generally can be split into two parts, the grandiose narcissistic and vulnerable narcissistic. Let me tell you the difference. What makes them similar is that they both have the narcissistic tendencies. They both think highly of themselves and think that everyone else is less than them, that they can do no wrong. But what makes them different is that their relationship with self-esteem and their adaptability and their reaction to criticism is different. For example, someone who's a grandiose narcissistic, which I would like say someone like Aladdin from the movie Dictator. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but he's the complete replica of what a grandiose narcissistic person looks like. He thinks highly of themselves and thinks that he's this divine being, no one is better than him. And in the face of criticism, he thinks less of the guy who's criticizing him, not himself. That's how highly he thinks of himself. But the vulnerable narcissistic person, in the face of criticism, they break down. For example, like the example that I want to say is Jada Pinkett Smith. We all know that she thinks very, very highly of herself. She thinks that everything revolves around her. Like, even to a date, even me who I'm doing this video, I don't know what she does. I don't know what's her occupation. I just know that she's Will Smith's wife. Is she an actor or singer? I don't know what she does basically. But she thinks so highly of herself as if Will Smith got famous because of her and not vice versa. And that everything that happens is about her and her experience. She always talks about what it was meant for her, what was the feeling of her in that situation, and how she's dealing with this stuff. And honestly, I couldn't care less if she wasn't Will Smith's wife and I didn't want to make a video about it. But she doesn't think that. She thinks it is very, very important for everyone to understand and can sympathize with her. But in the face of slightest criticism, she breaks down. Like, for example, she used to say when she first shaved her head, she said this.
Which is why I feel the freedom today. I don't give two craps what people feel about this bald head of mine, because guess what? I love.
She said it very confidently and as if like she's a very independent and high self-esteem woman who doesn't believe her appearance can change her value and that she shouldn't be valued of her hair and it doesn't affect her at all. But it couldn't be further from truth. We saw that when she saw slightest criticism, not even criticism, she saw a joke about her appearance and how she completely broke down and completely took it the wrong way and resolved in the physical violence in order to silence the guy who made a joke about her appearance. You know how crazy that sounds? Like, that's so bizarre for someone to act that way. Basically, so grandiose narcissisms are Aladdin and vulnerable narcissistic people are Jada Pinkett Smith. You can see the difference, I think, now. They have the narcissistic traits with vulnerability, with the doubt of they might not be shit. That's why they act so highly, because they know that they are not it. That's what I'm trying to say. They're not sure of their conviction. So they act and resort to violence. And there's something that I wish you guys to know. Narcissism is in the contrast with high self-esteem. Basically, they're not the same thing. So what is self-esteem? Self-esteem, how we value and perceive ourselves. Basically, the picture that you have of yourself in your mind. That's your self-esteem. The way that Sigmund Freud describes it, of how we can determine self-esteem, I don't know if you guys know about the structure of ego, superego, and id. If you guys want to know about this, tell me in the comment if I should make a video about it, explaining it. Basically, the very simple explanation is ego is what you really are. Superego is what you think the best version of you should be. And the more distance these two are, the more distance there is between the perfect you and what you actually are, the less self-esteem you'll have. And the less distance that there is between them, the more self-esteem you have. Narcissistic people, usually the more they have narcissistic behavior, the less self-esteem they have. That's the meaning of it. So because they know they have so difference between what they perfectly should be and what they actually are, they tend to violence, they tend to vulnerability, they tend to be more reactive. For example, let me give you this example. This is the example that I usually use. Imagine if you're rich, like you're super rich, Elon Musk rich, and you're walking in the street and you have one of those simple phones with buttons and shit. And someone walks by and says, "Ha, look at this poor bastard. He doesn't have money to buy an iPhone." If you're super rich, what you gonna do? You're just gonna laugh it off and yeah, I don't have money. But imagine if you're actually poor, if you can't actually afford an iPhone and you have a simple phone. First of all, you'll do anything to hide it so no one can see it. And if someone sees it and says, look at this poor bastard, he can't afford an iPhone, you will break down. If you don't have the money actually to buy an iPhone, you will actually break down, and it will affect you greatly because you know that it's true. This is how self-esteem works. The less self-esteem you have, the more reactive you'll be to criticism and to jokes, because you know that it might be true. You're not sure of yourself. Narcissism's relation to self-esteem depends on which component of narcissism are empathized. And narcissism is basically not synonymous with self-esteem. Although both narcissistic people and high self-esteem people are related to an extroverted, assertive, approach-oriented, interpersonal style, like a leader, the one that you see in parties and shit, the cool kids. Both high self-esteem people and narcissistic people have the same appearance of a leader, of someone who should be looked up to. But people with high self-esteem are entirely adaptive. What I mean by that? People who have high self-esteem, they can adapt to any criticism and any joke and any situation. They don't think the world should adapt to them because they think highly of themselves. They know that the world isn't going to respond to them, and it's not because of their lack of value, it's because just how the world works. In contrast, narcissistic people are uniquely linked to aggression, interpersonal coldness, antisociality, and suite of interpersonal problematic traits like manipulativeness and deceitfulness and callousness, attention seeking, basically all of the traits that you might find to arrogance. Another example that I usually use when I'm trying to explain this is that it is like having a castle that's built of glass. Like the castle looks big and strong and impregnable, and you can feel safe in there, but entirety of it is built of glass. And if someone just shoots a cannon at it, it's gonna shatter in a second into a million pieces. And you will see the true face of the people who are behind that walls. Now, this might cause a question. What underlines narcissistic actions? What makes someone narcissistic? What's the cause of it? First of all, it's a multifactor idea. There's no one answer to it. We should know that it's a personality disorder. So basically, it is a huge part of genetics that works into it. But what does this means is not anyone who has the genetics and the genes to be narcissistic is a narcissistic. What it means is that the roots are there, it just needs nurturing to grow. And the nurturing can be made in the early ages or be enforced in the early ages by social relationships and cultures. Like, for example, when a parent overly praises their kids and doesn't criticize them at all, that's gonna cause a feeling of narcissistic tendencies in that kid. And on the other hand, if a parent is neglectful and they don't attend to their kid at all, that's also gonna cause narcissistic tendencies in them, but in a totally different way. This is where there's theories that where the grandiose narcissism and vulnerable narcissism gets on a different route. Grandiose narcissistic people usually have a parent who is very, very praiseful of them, who doesn't criticize them at all. And on the other hand, the kids who have a neglectful parent, the kids who feel like they're not getting attention, they will counter this feeling of uselessness and this feeling of being invalued by the idea that they should fake it, they should make it by themselves. That will usually show in the overly exaggerated manners of narcissistic behaviors. You should take into consideration that the more individualistic is a culture, the more narcissistic people will appear. The more the culture is about you and your feeling and your growth and your greatness, the more you will be focused on yourself. On the other hand, the more the culture is about community and working with each other and value as a whole, the less people will be narcissistic. So it's not just genetic, and it's not just parenting, and it's not just culture. It's a combination of all of these things. And narcissistic people are very, very rare to be self-aware. Like, most of them don't know that they're narcissistic. They don't even think that it's a problem. So usually how they get diagnosed is that they go to therapists for a different reason. For example, for substance abuse or like depression or anything else, like a problem in the marriage, couple therapy or anything. And the therapist or the psychologist will find out that they have narcissistic tendencies. They usually don't go to the psychologist because they think they're narcissistic. And so when you see someone who's bragging about how narcissistic they are, they're not narcissistic. That doesn't make any sense. Like, there's nothing to be bragging about. It's a completely show-off, lack of self-awareness, self-respect. On the other hand, if they were actually narcissistic, they wouldn't think that they're narcissistic. They just know that they're better than everyone else. And also between 0.5% and 5% of the people in the USA may be diagnosed with narcissism. So it's actually very, very rare. So this doesn't mean that anyone who has any narcissistic tendencies or anyone who is a little bit cocky is a narcissistic person. So don't go around and just calling people that you don't like or your ex-girlfriend or your ex-boyfriend narcissistic, because that's most of the time not true. This is a personality disorder. This is the job of the psychologist to find out, not you. Like and subscribe for more original content. We're just gonna post more every day, every single day, every week, every month. We're just gonna post videos. So subscribe if you want to see more of this original content, and tell me in the comment what you want to see next, or what you didn't like to hear, what you think is bad with me. And yeah, see you guys in a bit.